I do want to thank all of our grantees for being with us today and sharing all of the fantastic work that you are doing. I am going to ask Educurious and Chris and Naomi to kick us off. So let me go ahead and get you guys started. I will be navigating through the screen here. So if you want to just wave your hands or give me a little ping or just tell me to forward the slides when you're ready. I'll do my best to anticipate when that's coming, but I don't want to cut you off prematurely. So over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Barbara. And just so grateful to be here today to share the work that we've been doing with teachers across the state on Washington state history this past year and the last couple of years. And so my name is Chris Carter. I'm the humanities manager at Educurious, and I'll let my colleague introduce herself as well.
Hi, I'm Naomi Sai, a humanities professional learning and curriculum designer at Educurious.
All right, and just a little bit of background before we kind of dig into the project that we focused on this year. So the Washington State History course was created several years ago in partnership with teachers and districts across the Puget Sound. And the partnership resulted in 6 units in the Washington State History course for 7th graders. So on the right here, you'll see the different topics that each of those units cover. And in addition to being focused and situated in project-based learning principles of design, the units also tackle critical issues. They're anti-biased, interdisciplinary, they're very personalized and localized to the extent that they can be. And they're aligned to Washington State standards and the C3 framework. Next slide. And want to shout out the teachers that we've worked with this year here on the left. They were part of a cohort where we really looked deeply at the curriculum that had been created and thought about how do we localize this? How do we customize it? How do we adapt it for our students? And so those folks on the left were a part of that cohort work this year. And again, from districts in different parts of the state to really help us think about what it looks like to do this work locally. And then the districts on the right, those were the districts that helped us initially in the co-design of the 6 units. So really grateful for those partnerships this year and years past. Next slide. And just kind of a quick shout out, here are the 6 units. They are 2 to 4 weeks in length. They're conceptually designed, they're rich in media and text. And part of being an OER resource, which is really important to us, is that everything is fully adaptable. So when you go to OER Commons, you can download it as Google files, Microsoft Word files. There are student handouts, there's a slide deck and a lesson plan, and teachers can download those and adapt those for their local needs. One thing I wanted to note is part of the work that we've been doing with districts and teachers is understanding what else we might want to include in the curriculum. And so in the next school year, we're exploring what it might look like to add 2 more units to the Washington State History course, one being focused on the state constitution and the other, the legacy of Japanese internment. So stay tuned for those. And here are the units, again, just laid out there. I think what I would call out here is they are interdisciplinary. And so some of the units are focused on history, while others might be focused on geography and economics, and others might be focused more on civics. So they do capture the scope of the Washington State standards, but each unit focuses on different subgroups of standards at a time. And over to you, Naomi.
Yeah, so in addition to all 6 of our Washington State History units, which are already posted, we've also now added the Educator Adaptation Guide for the Washington State History course, which will be going live very shortly. And that is the new resource that we're sharing with you and talking about today. And since it is still pending publication, Chris will share with you a link to a Google Doc so that you can view the guide yourself. The adaptation guide supports educators in thinking about how to localize, customize, and adapt the Washington State History course to create authentic connections to course content and to increase student engagement, student relevance, and equity of access. This guide is really a compilation of strategies that came out of the work we did with educators from all across the state. And it also provides a number of resources to support educators in making those adaptations themselves. The 6 strategies that we highlighted in the guide are listed here. And then the guide is also now in the chat. For each strategy, you will find 1 or 2 case studies that highlight how and where educators have used the strategy to adapt or customize the Washington State history course. And then as educators are going through this guide, we also really encourage them to reflect on how and where they might make these adaptations themselves. And so we provide a notes organizer pictured on the right to support their thinking as well. The strategy that we're going to be highlighting today is localizing examples and sources. Taking the time to localize examples and sources when possible makes history feel more relevant to students, and it also increases buy-in. So we highlight 2 case studies in this section, one in which a Renton school district teacher adapts the hashtag rights representation unit to focus on the Duwamish tribe and their fight for federal recognition. And then the adaptation we are focusing on today is this case study pictured here, in which Joe Sprouse, a teacher in the Carbonado School District, adapts the launch lesson in Decisions That Define Us. The launch lesson asks students to conduct a primary source analysis of a controversial mural in a post office in Anacortes. And then it invites students to explore the conflicting perspectives of the mural artist and the postmaster. So ultimately, this lesson is really about perspective. It's about told and untold stories within our state and the ethical responsibilities that artists have when representing communities. So Joe Sprouse took this launch lesson and he decided to replace the Anacortes mural with a mural that was local to his town. And he actually went out and he found this mural, and this is a mural that then became the focus for the launch lesson. And by making this adaptation and by making the focus of the lesson local, he was also able to organize a field trip for students to view it in person. And this is a really powerful, effective, but simple adaptation that still maintains the integrity and main ideas of the lesson. So in addition, after each case study, we also provide some ideas and resources for how educators can achieve this in their context. So for example, for this case study, we highlighted the Arts Washington My Public Art portal, where you can search for public art, including murals, by location in Washington State. And so we provide those resources in hopes that you then will be able to apply this work into your own context.
Thank you, Naomi. Want to acknowledge that as we have been working with districts to implement this course in their schools, that we've also created other resources that are supplemental. And so one of those resources is the Washington State History course video-based professional learning series. And so we've been working to create short 4 to 5 minute unit overviews explaining the core content and the design of inquiry for that unit, and then deep dive skill videos to help educators understand some of the skills that students will be practicing and developing in that unit. And then we've also created Spanish language versions of all of the student materials for all of the units in the course. And so if you have any questions about these resources or you'd like to learn more, you can email info@educurious.org. I think Naomi dropped that in the chat. You can also email Blake, and either of those emails will work. And the last thing I just wanted to share is kind of our commitment around OER courses and units is that we believe everybody should have access to high quality instructional materials that center students in the classroom. And so the Washington State History course was our beginning work. And next school year, we'll be publishing high school OER courses for social studies in grades 9 through 12. And we're also going to start to work on elementary. And so all of that will be posted on the OER Commons. And this was kind of our first course that we've been building, and we're excited to continue to share more as we do this work. So with that, that's the end of our presentation. If there's time, would welcome questions in the chat. or unmuting.
All right, we're gonna keep an eye on the chat, and if anyone does have questions that come up, Chris, we will pause for a moment and share those with you. Thank you guys so much. Wonderful presentation. Always just excited to see all of the work that you're doing. If you are looking for the Educurious materials and you don't remember the name of all the units, when you do go to the Washington OER Hub, you can just type in Educurious and you will see the wide array of materials that they have available for you. Next up, I am going to pass it to our friends from the World Affairs Council of Seattle. Ryan, I am going to stop sharing, and I'm going to let you pick up the share and take it from here.
Great, thank you, Barbara. Let's see. Hold on just a moment. Let's see, stop share. Get this on. There we go. All right, can you see this okay?
Can you go to, yeah, that's good.
Okay, perfect. So thanks again, Barbara, for providing this opportunity. I'm Ryan Hauk. I work at the World Affairs Council in Seattle. I direct their global education program. And I've been working with Michelle Ancioe-Oki, who's here with me as well. And we've been working for a number of years now on what we call our Global Competence Certificate Portfolio Project. And basically it gives students in Washington State an opportunity to reflect on their global learning, their cross-cultural experiences, local and global, and then also their language learning. And so that's evolved over the years into a number of different opportunities. And most recently over the past 2 years, especially as the pandemic began, we had an opportunity to become more inclusive and reach out to students, heritage language students in 4 different languages to complete the Global Competence Certificate Portfolio. And those languages are Russian, Ukrainian, Spanish, and Romanian. And as we've been doing this project, one of our big focuses has been around the Sustainable Development Goals. So I'm going to move to the next slide here for just a moment. And as Michelle and I had sort of thought about this particular, is it sharing?
Yeah.
Not yet, Ryan.
Okay.
There you
Can
go.
you see it now? I think for some reason my internet connection's a little bit slow here in the office, but one of the things that we wanted to do is we wanted to create resources around the Sustainable Development Goals that can be used by a wide range of teachers, disciplines, and we wanted these lessons to be translated into these 4 heritage languages in the hope that eventually, of course, more of these lessons could be translated into additional languages. So that was part of our purpose. A longtime teacher at Glacier Peak High School in Snohomish, and I'm a big proponent of global education and really believe that we want actively engaged citizens, not only at the local level, but also at the global level, and that we really need rich resources for teachers to bring global issues into the classroom. And one of the ways that I do that in my own classroom is through these 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Global competence really utilizes a real broad interdisciplinary framework to really help students develop essential skills, knowledge, dispositions, and attitudes in our world that's really interconnected and interdependent. And so we decided as part of this project to focus on 6 Sustainable Development Goals, which I'll show you in just a moment. Some of the goals have an environmental focus. So we were thinking about some of the classroom-based assessments that are currently being revised. And we noticed that one of the themes at the middle and high school level was the environment. And so we decided to sort of weave that theme into 3 of the lessons. And then the other lesson, the other 3 lessons are focused a bit more on culturally responsive teaching. So I'll share that in just a moment as well. We're really, as part of these lessons, encouraging teachers and students to really explore and analyze these issues, really be able to communicate their perspectives, and then identify ways to take action on global issues. Each of these lessons can be used individually or collectively as a series. You'll find them in social studies, you'll find them in world languages, but I think if some of you've used the Sustainable Development Goals before, you'll notice that they can really be applied across the curriculum. They're very interdisciplinary. All of the units or all of the lessons that we've created are project-based. They tie to the C3 framework, just like you heard with Educurious. We also wanted to include some different modalities. So you can really adapt this to in-person instruction like I could in my classroom, or we have some instructors in these different heritage languages that are working with students across Washington State, and they're doing it virtually where they can bring students in from a variety of schools. And so we also wanted to make sure that you could implement some of these lessons virtually. And of course, they can all be adapted and modified to your classroom. So here are the 6 lessons that are 6 sustainable development goals that we decided to focus on, and the 6 lessons. So lesson 1 is around climate action, sustainable development goal number 13. Lesson 2 is sustainable development goal number 1, no poverty. Sustainable development goal number 9, industry innovation and infrastructure. Lesson 4 is around sustainable development goal number 4, quality education. Lesson number 5, sustainable development goal number 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions. And lesson 6 is sustainable development goal number 10, reduce inequalities. And so you have 6 different global goals that you can focus on, but they also really, you can find so many connections between all of them. So I wanted to see if I could show you can see some of the translated work that we've been doing. The lessons themselves are not up yet on the OER Commons, but they will be. We have a little bit more translation work to do, and then you'll be able to find them both in social studies, world languages, and looking under keywords such as global issues, civics, the sustainable development goals. So let me see if I can stop sharing, Barbara, and let me just see if I can share one clip that I wanted to show you. Just 1 second.
Sure, share with.
Yeah, I will. Yeah. Okay. See if I still remember how to do this from teaching over Zoom for a while. Let's see, share with sound. Okay, and so here's a student who's been in our program who's discussing one of the sustainable development goals in our program. Yeah, I haven't shared it yet. There we go. Can you see it? Okay.
Another is climate action, and this one is one that's just so broad and so important all the time. I always see it in the news, and it's
Whoops, sorry.
One that scares me a little bit, honestly, which is why I wanted to talk about it, because it's something that everyone talks about, but the fact that there's no simple solution makes it seem that much more terrifying. And I wanted to learn more about it to kind of make it seem safer and make myself feel better about this and make it feel like a more attainable goal. And then this one.
So for the sake of time, I'll go ahead and stop there. But basically, students create their own online portfolio again that reflects their personal learning, their global competence skills, their cross-cultural experiences, and their language learning. So it's really been a fun project. The students present and other students come and It's really been a great experience. So I'm hoping that these OER website or OER lessons will really support this particular project, but also be widely available to teachers who want to bring these goals into the classroom. So I know that was a lot, but thank you very much for your interest.
Thanks so much, Ryan. Great stuff. And as I'm reading the chat and all of the information that's bouncing back and forth, prior to ending the session, I will be sure to save the chat too. So any of those links or comments or answers to the questions, we'll be sure to capture that and share that with everyone. All right, we are moving along to Shape Washington. Amy and Tony, I believe, are presenting.
Yeah, thank you, Barbara. Again, thank you for this opportunity. We're really excited to contribute to the OER lessons this year. I want to just introduce us as Shape Washington. We are the Society of Health and Physical Educators, supporting health and physical educators in the state of Washington through professional development, our membership, and stuff like this with the lessons. And so I'll let Amy explain it, and I'll be here to help contribute.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Amy Matson. As Tony said, I'm on the board. I'm also a middle school PE teacher. So this was a really cool opportunity for us to kind of have Tony's brain and a in-classroom teacher to get this project going. So you can go ahead and move to the next slide. Our project goal was to take existing lesson plans that are on the OER Hub from K through 12 that we adapted to the needs of students with disabilities and inclusionary activities. So all of these units were already in the Hub with the designated standards and lesson plans. And so we took these and adapted them as if we would take them into our own classrooms. So these lesson plans are going to be able to meet both the inclusion and self-contained model classrooms. Some of the lessons that we adapted are soccer, spike ball, tube ball, frisbee, golf, hiking, and orienteering. So then the next slide, I will go into that more. So this is kind of a snapshot of what our lesson plan looks like. We reached out to a lot of teachers across the state and surveyed them of what they are looking for when it comes to a lesson plan, and what is the most user-friendly for our teachers, because they are the ones that will be using this. And so a lot of the feedback was for not only written directions, but also visuals, and to keep it simple and easy to follow. So for all of our lesson plans, we start out with kind of the unit plan, which has the how many days it is. So like, for example, this one is 10 days. And then within each day is that template for kind of what day one, the standard or focus is, the equipment that is needed, what the actual activity is, and then any modifications that we can modify further. So we have taken the existing lesson plan for day one of soccer, for example, and we have adapted it. And then we've also given more modifications. So that's what you see through the writing, and then as well as any visuals to help teachers be able to understand it more or get their own ideas based on of the modifications and kind of the template that we've laid out for them. And then you can go to the next one. Thank you. In some of the lesson plans at the end, we have adaptation posters. So when it is applicable, we will have just kind of another screenshot of additional modifications and what they look like. So for soccer, it was, you can use a different type of ball or goal. We changed the actual field or environment as a possible modification, and then any other additional equipment that you see here for students that use a chair or a walker. We've put that kind of as in one spot. So if we've mentioned it throughout the lesson plans, we wanted to make it super easy, and also to help give ideas for teachers to be able to use these in other units that we did not also adapt. So this is kind of a general adaptation poster that will be at the end of the lesson plan, as a simple go-to for ideas if they need further modifications based on their students' skills and abilities. So where to find it? You can find it, you'll find it underneath the other lesson plans that are already existing. And so it would just say the adapted soccer unit plan, and have all of the lessons. The standards are the same. So the standards that are in the 3 to 5 soccer lesson plans are going to be the same for this unit as well. And you'd be able to find it all in that same spot. So whether you're going to a gen ed lesson plan or you want an adapted version, they're all easy to find and all together. As far as our further goal of being able to implement this, because it's important that when we created these lesson plans that teachers would actually be able to use them easily. And so the goal and the intention was to make sure that, number one, we are starting from the basics and that we're bringing the students' perspective of their abilities into it first and foremost. And so within the lesson plans, we start with the basics, and then there's modifications to either make it more challenging or to even further adapt it based on the teachers and the students, and where they're at. And that it's okay to repeat the lessons. Some of these lesson plans were like 15 days long. And so we wouldn't, in an adapted class, actually have a 15-day soccer unit. That's a lot. It's a lot for any of us, but so we have broken it down into like the 10-day or 5 to 7, but teachers are able to pick and choose kind of what their like students want to do or what they want to do, and be able to still create a unit. We slow the pacing down. So a lot of the activities are very much starting in a slow pace and then being able to add on to that. Visuals, again, the teacher feedback was that visuals are important. And for a lot of our students, I know I'm personally a visual learner. And so being able to give that visual as part of the lesson plan is super important. Getting student voice is always something that we should do. And so being able to kind of implement one of the lesson plans and then get the feedback from the students and be able to kind of pick and choose the information that we've laid out and use what they think is applicable versus not is great based on their student voice. And again, starting with the basics and building up, and then realizing that the skill progression is going to vary between all of the students, and that some of the students are going to stay at one level and some of the students are going to be able to add in those challenges that we have put in throughout the lesson plan. And so those are kind of our implementation tips and what we really wanted to be able for the teachers that are going to use these lesson plans to take away from using these. So yeah, if there's any questions, we love questions. Tony, let me know if you want to add anything.
I think you did a great job. We're excited to share these with teachers, and especially with having those teacher voices, like you said.
Yeah, I think it's important to realize that everyone adapts something in our lives. And so being able to kind of have this as like an easy resource and is really our goal. Easily accessible.
Fantastic work, you guys. Let me say really quickly, Amy and Tony, that I've started some of the resources I know that Gail uploaded as individual resources, and I'm starting to attach them to the existing work as well. So if you look at the hiking unit or the orienteering one, those are done. And then the other ones try and get to here in the next few days. So if folks are going on to the Washington OER Hub to look for these specific resources, know that right now you might find them as separate adapted units, but they will be tied to the original ones just in a few days.
Thank you for doing
guys.
that. Appreciate it.
For sure.
Thank you, Barbara.
All right, Teresa, I'm going to pass it along to you. Go to Lake Washington School District.
Awesome. Thank you, Barbara. I'm Teresa Vasquez. I am the World Languages Specialist in Teaching and Learning for Lake Washington School District. And I am here on behalf of all of our amazing teachers, World Languages teachers that have contributed to this project that we're excited to share with you today. So for our project, we are sharing resources that we have previously created and are now working on implementing and revising, currently using in our district in our Spanish classes. So starting in 2020-21, our Japanese and Spanish teachers started working on learning more about standards aligned research-based instructional practice and backwards design models for writing curriculum. And we were lucky enough, just so happened that the pandemic hit and everyone moved online, and we were able to leverage that to work with Laura Terrell, who is the author of The Keys to Planning for Learning, she is a curriculum expert specifically for world language curriculum design. And so she lives in the Midwest, but we were able to work with her virtually to really elevate the work. And so now we are in this iterative cycle of collecting feedback from students and teachers, refining our units, implementing, trying out more, and coming back around. And we're excited to share that on the hub, to share statewide, and also to hopefully build some collaborative relationships with all of you and your teachers. So for this project specifically, we wanted to revise and share some of the resources that we are already working on, particularly our Spanish 1 units. We are working on uploading 2 of the units currently, and we hope to upload the full 4 for an entire year of Spanish 1. Our units are based on templates and foundational principles in the Keys to Planning for Learning, which is published by our National Languages Organization, ACTFL, and Laura Terrell helped to write, and it is directly aligned to effective practice for language acquisition. So for this particular project, we took a look at making sure that the resources that we produced to use in district were aligned to Creative Commons licensing and attribution guidelines. We looked at ADA compliance to make sure that our formatting was able to be read by screen readers and things like that, so that all of our students and teachers would have access to the resources. And we really looked at teacher friendliness. So if someone were to pick up the resource from outside of our district who hadn't been part of the curriculum writing work or had the specific professional learning that we've been engaging in, would they still be able to implement? And so thinking through that lens, we made some additional revisions, and it's exciting to see how this grant and this work was able to really elevate the work that we're already engaging in. In much like the other resources shared today, I think the best way to find the resources is searching. So using terms like Lake Washington School District, Spanish 1 curriculum, things like that should hopefully easily take you there. And we hope to have 2 full units uploaded by the end of June. Each unit is meant to be about 7 to 10 weeks, so about a quarter of typical middle or high school public school learning, if you look through that lens, but can easily be adapted. Like that, as others have said, that's one of the beautiful aspects of OER is it can easily be adapted for your context. And I'll go into some of the components that are in each of the units. So for each unit we've uploaded, there are teacher-facing and student-facing resources. There is a unit overview template that really lays out for the teacher how the lesson is designed and starts with the end in mind. So one thing that we love about this format is it is formatted in a way that guides us through thinking through a backwards planning framework. And so It starts with emphasizing the world language standards and how they're all addressed in each unit. What is the performance target? What are the themes and topics called out? And we aligned our themes to the College Board Advanced Placement World Languages themes, but they would apply to IB themes if that's something that you teach in your programs. There's at least one essential question for each unit, and then the unit goals that we expect students to be able to achieve by the end. Our approach to these units was recognizing that the 11 world languages standards should really be taught interwoven and not in isolation. And so all 11 are addressed in every unit. And we did call out some of the ways that each standard is directly addressed, but acknowledging that depending on how teachers implement, there are lots of other opportunities to address the standards. But wanted to make sure that that is explicit and the standards alignment is explicit for each unit. One thing that I think is the most powerful about the work we've done, and one reason that we are also excited about it is the shift in practice that we've seen teachers embrace. And ultimately, this was the main driver in our teachers' decision to write curriculum instead of adopting a pre-published curriculum. And we're hoping that others will find this useful as well. So all the resources are really intentionally designed to support core practices for language acquisition, including an immersive environment of 90% plus target language use, centering on authentic resources and teaching students how to interpret those authentic resources, planning with a backwards design model, etc. So these core practices really serve as the foundation, and the resources support those practices. We do have assessments based on the integrated performance assessment. We use this book, Implementing Integrative Performance Assessments, to inform our work. Again, we continue to do so much learning. We are currently using these resources with our students. So to protect test security, we haven't included the assessments in the hub, but if you are interested in more information or would like to see samples, feel free to reach out to our teaching and learning email. I'll also put my email address in the chat, and we'd be happy to share more details with you that way. But just know that we're currently using and trying things out and adjusting as we go. Our units also include a teacher toolbox as outlined in the Keys to Planning for Learning book. So that includes can-do statements that can be used as daily or weekly learning targets, functions, priority structures, and key vocabulary that are aligned to the unit goals. At the center of the resources for teachers, we have 2 to 3 core resources for each unit that are really meant to be must-dos. And for your purposes, you can take what is useful to you, adapt what is useful to you. In our district, teachers have committed to using, at a minimum, the core resources. And so these are authentic resources. For level 1, these are they look like infographics, real world text that students might encounter at the beginning of their language journey. And with each one, we have an activity guide. And so it outlines what to do before walking students through the resource, how to guide them through interpreting it, and then what to do after to ensure that they connect personally and extend their learning. And again, this is all done through the assumption that we are guiding them through these experiences in the target language. So in this case, in Spanish. We also have vocabulary lists for each unit, but these are different than the traditional vocabulary list that is, receive and memorize. These are really meant to guide, not as prescriptive lists. And each one comes with a can-do checklist for student self-reflection throughout the unit to come back to and continue thinking about, where am I in the learning, and what do I still, what are some opportunities for growth? Also, the vocabulary, we have 2 types of lists that we've shared in the hub that we've uploaded as Word documents, so you can adapt and change as needed. One that has the English, one, which is my favorite, that does not, and allows students to negotiate meaning using drawing or using synonyms or antonyms. Excuse me.
Oops, did I preemptively go forward there, Teresa? I'm sorry.
No, that's perfect. In addition to the core resources, we have additional resources. Excuse me, I'm coming off a cold. That align to our unit goals. For example, this is one from YouTube. And these are additional resources that teachers can use as helpful, but you can have confidence that they are standards aligned and aligned to the unit goals. And then finally, each unit includes a weekly agenda with an attached PowerPoint. Our teachers have found this helpful to really help to visualize how this kind of all comes together. 7 to 10 weeks is a long time. And so thinking about how, what that sequence could be and some further resources to support that is really what's in the weekly agenda. So for our licensing, we have made it as open as possible, but we did use a non-commercial license because many of our resources are sourced from out of the country, from target language cultures where licensing practices vary. So to be careful, we just have attached that attribution and non-commercial license. So when you enter the resource, it is a full curriculum with each unit having its own section, and then the separate elements that I've outlined will have their particular sections as well, and everything in there can be downloaded, adapted. We would love if you find any of it useful, or you find additional resources that support the unit, or you make adaptations. We would love if you would share back so that we can learn from you and grow from our collective brain power. And then finally, for implementation, I want to say we are in year 3 of this journey now, and we feel like we're just getting started. So it really is a long-term journey to shift practice, and it has been so exciting to see. I'm so proud of our teachers. Some of them are here today, so huge shout out to them. And a few tips, things we've learned along the way. Just thinking backwards. So continuing to keep the end in mind, thinking about what are the ultimate goals for our students, and what are the core essential pieces that are going to help them get there. Continuing to think about how to create that space, that classroom culture for maintaining 90% target language use. If you need a place to start, recommend starting with the core resources and thinking about how can you milk them over multiple modes of communication to stretch them out and give students more opportunity to acquire the language. So thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions, feel free to pop them into the chat or reach out to me directly.
Thank you so much, Teresa. I am so excited about all the resources that we've taken a look at so far. Just an incredible body of work. Thank you guys all so much. Tony, I think that you are up next. Did you want to share your screen, or would you like, I know there's a video portion, and I'm happy to just click video on my end, unless you would like to do that.
I can share my screen. I'll do the PowerPoint first, and then I'll just do a sample of the video.
Sounds good. Let me stop my share, and then I will let you take it from here.
All right, great. Thanks. Let me do that 1 second here. I'm sharing my screen. Okay, I hope you can see that. Okay, right on. So, hey, everybody, I'm super glad to be here. Want to start off by thanking OER for letting me have the opportunity to do this project. It's super important to us, and also honored to be a part of this group. It's really interesting to learn what you all are doing, and yeah, it's super inspiring for me as well. Unfortunately, after my presentation, I have to head out to another presentation. I'm in Manson right now for Debt Slapped here, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but I look forward to watching the video of the rest of the presenters. So just giving you a little context about Sense, that's the nonprofit organization behind the curriculum Debt Slapped. We're a nonprofit organization. All of our resources are free of charge. We do a variety of programs for various audiences, including senior citizens, scam awareness, people who've experienced incarceration, cancer patients, etc. But our project here is for high school students. How do we help high school students obtain critical information so they can make an informed decision about what to do after high school? And that's our Debt Slapped curriculum. One of the reasons we started that is, the debt explosion. Here's just a slide about debt throughout the US. As you can see at the bottom, total student loan debt is 1.76 trillion. It has leapfrogged credit card debt and auto loan debt to be the #2 category of debt in the United States. So our curriculum is trying to, in this context of exploding education costs, rising debt, to help empower students to be mindful of how they take the next step. So our curriculum in a nutshell it aligns with the Washington State Financial Literacy Standards. We have Earning, where we have the students look at different careers and incomes, and we use that as an opportunity to talk about gross income and net income and why that matters, and why paying taxes is important, and those kinds of things, and just to get students thinking about their options. Then we talk about spending and budgeting, what a budget is, why do you budget, and we try to, in addition to having the students learn and retain learning objectives, we have activities where they can practice the skills. So each unit has time in the classroom where a student can, for the first example, first lesson, look at different careers and incomes. For the spending lesson, actually make a budget and, see if the career that they chose, if we look at the monthly net income of that, how does that stack up to our budget? So we try to make it, relevant and practical for the students. Then we talk about saving, the different levels of savings as another lesson, investing, borrowing debt, and this is where we start getting into the post-secondary education or training. Learn the borrowing fundamentals. What are the factors that cause debt to grow, and how can you minimize your debt costs in the context of going to school or car, house, whatever it may be. Planning for life after high school, and that's where we give information about student loans and the different types of student loans, federal loans versus private student loans, and what are the important distinctions between those two categories. Other aid for like a Washington State College grant, what aid is out there for students to look for. And I want to add that our grant was to take this curriculum, which is in English right now, and make a Spanish language version of that. And so to make a culturally appropriate and effective curriculum, I call it Roadshow, which I'm in the process of doing right now, and we've done it earlier. We take the curriculum out and road test it to multi-language learners, get feedback, and implement that feedback into the curriculum. We kind of go through that process, and rather than just simply translating it from English to Spanish. So we're in the process of doing that now. We're near the tail end of that, but we're still gathering information. And of course, we're focusing on areas with higher percentages of Latino, Latina, Latinx students for feedback on this curriculum. So outreach, we have a statewide focus on areas with higher percentages of students who are Latino, Latina, Latinx, like I said, and or speak Spanish. And this is going to be our goal when we finish this project. So we are going to have a complete Spanish language version. This grant was for the translation of the materials, the going out and providing our classes and getting feedback, that was provided by another funder. So we really wanted to lock the content down and make it as great as possible before we had that translation. So we're trying to be super intentional about that. If you have any connections that you think this would be a good fit, we're all ears, would love to partner and team up. Just as a sample, so, you know, we're in the process of finishing that translation, so I can't show you the actual translation, but it's eventually going to be on the OER Commons and also on our website, which I'll show in a second, but it's the debtslapped.org website. It's free. But as a sample, we also have some videos that we plug into the curriculum, and we have one called the 2-class video series, which is if a teacher doesn't have time for our entire curriculum, let's say they only have 2 classes, 1 or 2 classes, you could show a portion of the video. And I'm going to try to do that now. Let me stop sharing for a second and cue that up. The timing, you know, if it's not synced with sound, it could be because I'm playing it this way. So just an FYI, but we're just going to give it a shot, and I'll probably let it go for 15 seconds or so. So let me just get that resource 1 second here. Oops. Okay, here we go. All right.
Hola, soy el señor Weisman.
Y la señora Kat, pero puedes llamarme Kat.
Alerta de confusión, alerta de confusión.
Lo siento, Roba. Puedo ver cómo nuestros nombres pueden confundirte, pero aunque soy un tecolote, puedes llamarme Kat.
Y los tecolotes no son las únicas criaturas que son sabias.
Así es, señor.
So I just wanted to give a sample of the program. And so we have, that's our 2-class videos. And so with all of those lessons, we're going to have those in Spanish language, and those are going to be available on our website, which is right here. Oops. So happy to answer. I think my, let's see here. Email address right here at the end, tony@senseprogram.org. I'm happy to take any questions or send materials. And like I said, they'll be available on the OER Hub or on the debtslapped.org website. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk a little bit.
Tony, I had a question. Is the content now changed in English in any way? Has it been updated? Because I found that some of our students have really benefited from the curriculum. I'm just wondering if there's any changes that are made to the English version.
Yeah, so I should have mentioned that the 1.0 English version, debtslapped.org, is online right now, and that has a whole program where, you know, teachers and students sign up for that, log in and advance through the curriculum. So that's still online, but we are going to do a 2.0 of the English version as well. So we have it's not online yet, but that's going to be online when we put the Spanish version online as well. But it will be, you know, I don't know, in the same ballpark, but there's some enhancements to the English language that we're going to put in there as well when we launch the Spanish version.
When do you think we can check back in for the 2.0?
We hope to have it ready by the fall, but with the absolute drop dead date of January 2024. But again, we're going to be, you know, motoring through the summer to have that ready for the fall. But if we'll still have 1.0 available for that as well. And of course, this grant was for the translation of the Spanish program. We need to seek funding so we can get the Spanish program in the same, you know, I'll call it, you know, website or house as the English program has. You know, this grant, which we're very thankful for, allowed us to do the translation, but now we need more technical support to actually put it on an online program. But that being said, you know, PDF versions of our lessons in Spanish will be available in June.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tony. Really appreciate all of the work. Exciting stuff.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go ahead and move forward. Let's see. Kristen, I believe you guys are up next.
Kristen Leslie here from the Special Education Technology Center at Central Washington University. We are a state needs project funded by OSPI, and then we applied for this additional grant to work on a very important issue. We do consultations across the state. And so, for example, this year we met with about 43 different districts on how to increase access to curriculum for students with complex needs. And so that means students who may not be able to speak, have physical disabilities. And so through that, we see that many students do not have access to robust literacy instruction. And so there's the curriculum, but then there's not knowing how to have those students access it when they cannot hold a book, they cannot speak. How do we provide instruction for them? So our task was to create modules that extended best practices in literacy and looked at those ELA standards and extend those best practices with tools and strategies for students with complex communication needs and physical disabilities. So we did 4 modules that we created from scratch, from the ground up, on these foundational techniques, universal tools and strategies related to literacy instruction, then going on to alphabetic and phonological awareness, emergent reading, and emergent writing. And we hope to create 4 more going forward next year. So we can move on. Yeah. So Brenda, I'll let you. We have Brenda Del Monte on, who was key in creating these, and Sarah Kinsella. So 3 of us were the leads. And before I pass it over to Brenda, we had 7 different districts, either educator consultants or on our board. So that was Bellevue School District, Highline Public Schools, Oak Harbor, Walla, Toppenish, Edmonds, Wilbur School District. And we had then a retired speech and language pathologist helping us, and a brand new teacher giving some input to the initial module. Brenda, you want to talk about the why? Oh, you're on mute.
I mean, I think you did a good job. I don't know, but I do know that, you know, our kids that are not functionally verbal aren't able to like sound out words. Our kids with not great hand control aren't able to go through the stages of writing, like scribbling and that kind of thing. So when we look at developing language, especially in these emergent, developing literacy skills in these emergent areas, that we don't know how to adapt the curriculum to let kids go through the natural progression of reading and writing. And so our audience is for parents and teachers and literacy coaches and specialists, so that everyone's working together to help these kids with literacy, because many of these kids with complex needs also aren't functionally verbal. They are using communication devices, and really the only way that they can use a communication device to say what they want to say when they want to say it is if they spell it, because not every word you want to say is already pre-programmed in your device, and Dumbledore's not in there and all those things. So you have to be able to spell. And so we want to, the end game can be that we want them to be able to communicate what they want when they want to. And that may mean that they have to spell a word that's not in their system. And so not only do we understand all the benefits of being a reader and a writer for these kids that are using communication devices, reading and writing is actually directly tied to their communicating their wants and needs.
Yeah, and if you think about going through their education, needing to read and write, critical across all content areas. So it's meant to be implemented in general education, special education at home, in speech and therapy and occupational therapy. There's components that can be implemented across environments. So we jumped in right off the bat with strategies for effective implementation, because this really was meant to be paired with classroom curriculum. So that evidence-based classroom curriculum that's already there, how do we use these tools and strategies? A lot of technology in there to help these students then access the books that are in the classroom and at home, online, to access their curriculum. So we hoped that people would participate in these modules as a multidisciplinary team, because those occupational therapists are critical to helping students access certain things. The speech and language pathologist has another expertise around communication, and then the teacher, of course, with that instruction. So we'd love this to be implemented in teams. So all of the technology featured in these modules can be borrowed through the Special Education Technology Center, because we have a lending library. So our idea is to just come alongside educators throughout Washington State to then loan them items to implement these modules. And then we also hope that they reach out to us for free technical assistance and consultation so that we can help with further tools and strategies. So this is just, functionally, we use some common icons. We have a navigation area in each module so that they can connect to the different modules, because these are four separate modules with many different sections in each module. I put a slide in for each module, kind of explaining it. We won't go into detail into each module, but at least if someone would like to pass this information on to teachers they know that are teaching students with special needs, or general educators that have students with complex needs in their classroom, you could pass these slides along initially for them to know what the different modules are. So we used text, we used instructional videos, demonstration videos, application pictures, and then links to resources and expert opinion. And where we've received some of the demonstration videos and pictures are from the districts utilizing some of the tools and strategies with their students. Brenda, feel free to jump in anytime. So module 2, alphabet and phonological awareness, a lot of best practices, evidence-based practices and strategies throughout these modules that are really taking what we know about teaching literacy and just showing educators how do we do this with students that don't speak and who cannot write.
And I think we also have an reflection and application section at the end of each module where it's like, we want to challenge people going through the modules to go out and immediately use what they learn. We all learned this honestly through a lot of trial and error. And there was a book written in 2020 about comprehensive literacy for all, and it had brought together a lot of the research from the 80s till now, and tried and proven strategies. So we want people to not just blast through the modules, but see a section, see part of something on the module and go, pause, I want to go try this. We want them to, so we're trying to embed some reflection and some opportunity to apply to either a single student or a group of students at the end of each module, so that they're applying what they learn.
Yeah, and also share the research piece, as we all want to be using evidence-based practices, yet when you talk about using technology, sometimes there's not the research on some of the technology to show effectiveness, but then pairing, connecting the dots for people with the research and with the best practices to go, yes, we can use alternative methods when a student can't use a pencil. Here's a way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the next few slides just share what module 3 and then module 4 are, emergent reading and then emergent writing. So we'll let you guys look at that in more detail. But again, a lot of tools and strategies for teachers.
And I also would like we put the Common Core standards in every module so people can look and go, okay, how are we addressing Common Core standards for those with complex bodies? Because the standards are there for everyone, and presuming the potential to learn to read and write is required. So the standards we included were K through 2nd grade.
Yeah,
but that's because that's where most emergent reading and writing is happening. in our world, to be honest, there's a lot of kids in older grades that are still at the emergent reading and writing level. So we tried to add some things that were age respectful, so that if you need to go through the modules for a sixth grader because they're an emergent reading and writer, you can find age respectful and consider age respectful ways to teach what we know, preschoolers and kindergartners learn, but how can we present that in a way that is age respectful for them, so that they can be at wherever they are on the reading and writing continuum and be the age they are. So we're not doing brown bear in high school, basically.
All right, so I just threw this one in. There was a big learning curve, and I'm hoping that some of us who have been on this OER cycle then can mentor some coming up, because there wasn't a lot of things to be found on creating things in open author. And so we learned a lot of tips and tricks. We learned a lot about video editing, because from editing videos that were sent to us by staff to creating our own instructional videos. And then assuring accessibility all throughout, making sure we had the closed captioning, making sure we had the alt text was a priority. And then the collaboration with educators, just scheduling, getting artifacts, the videos are so important to this work, and getting feedback with all the different schedules was something to work out. And we're still getting feedback in this next month. And do some final editing, but we have 3 of the 4 modules published, and then we'll do some final editing and have those all done by the end of June. Time factor, yes, the scale of project. We started out wanting to do 8 modules, and we quickly contacted Barbara and said, can we talk about doing 4 complete, robust modules, and then can perhaps in the following years do the next 4. So understanding the scope of the work and what we actually could accomplish was important.
I'm sorry, Kristen, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was trying to preemptively guess when to hit the next slide.
No problem. That was fine. I kind of ended it abruptly on my slide. So if there's any thoughts or questions, let us know or reach out to us. If you know a teacher who would benefit from this, please share. I'll put my email in the chat, and if you know of teachers who would like resources such as this, we'd love to reach out.
Thank you guys so much. Just really phenomenal work. So exciting. I do want to say a couple of things. I will make the slide deck available as well as the recording. So all of the links that are embedded in all these slides, everyone will have access to. And Kristen, I have to say, I love your idea of mentoring new folks in the upcoming grant cycles. I might reach out to you and talk a little bit more about what that could possibly look like, because I think it's a great idea. All right, I am going to move us along to Ben. You are up next with Griffin Bay.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today on the Zoom meeting. My name is Benjamin Troutman. I'm a teacher here at Griffin Bay School, a multi-district alternative school here in Friday Harbor as part of the San Juan Island School District. And I'm thrilled. I'm really excited to present to you our project. It's enhancing students' post-secondary outcomes through curriculum adaptations. You can go ahead to the next slide. That's okay. Yep. And you'll see here our objectives were 3 in each category, and those were the titles for the lessons. This grant focused on integrating open educational materials, instruction, assessment, and meaningful application to prepare our high school students for adulthood and future success. Our project identified 3 essential future-ready concepts and skills: civics, financial literacy, and well-being or health. These areas were chosen based on feedback from our community of students, teachers, and parents who recognize their importance in preparing our students for the next stage in their lives. We believe that a comprehensive understanding of these subjects will empower our students to become independent problem solvers and thrive in their future endeavors. And we're really excited to have them open to all through OER. So to achieve our goals, we outlined a series of tasks and deliverables. We wanted to provide explicit instruction on the identified essential concepts and skills, try to carefully sequence the lessons to ensure student progress from basic skills to more advanced content. And our project timeline spanned from August of last year to today, with 3 months of planning beforehand, with each subject area receiving dedicated attention during those specific times. So civic education was covered from August to November, financial education from December to February, and health education from March to May. So to deliver and adapt our curriculum materials, we drew from a variety of open source materials and resources and existing materials. These resources included the Bill of Rights Institute, Learning Express Library, OSPI Career Guidance, Washington Lesson Plans, Washington Career Bridge, and much more, especially from all of the resources that are available for remixing on the OER site. So by leveraging these materials, we aim to create engaging and accessible content for our high school students and hope to ensure that they receive a well-rounded education in these critical areas. The lesson structure we devised consists of 5 parts designed to be clearly presented. In each part, students would be challenged with questions that require increasing levels of higher order thinking. They answer multiple choice, short response, and extended response questions, gradually building their proficiency and hopefully their confidence in the material. To support student learning, we implemented 3 levels of scaffolding: support, accountability, and problem-solving experience. These scaffolds gradually transition students towards independence and critical thinking. And I just put some pizza up there because everyone's probably getting hungry. As educators, we understand the importance of providing comprehensive support to both students and teachers. That's why we're committed to providing and creating supportive teacher lesson guides, which include answer analysis, making it easy to correct, reassign, and review. And we hope these guides that are going to be and are on the OER sites will serve as valuable resources for educators, ensuring that they have the necessary tools to deliver the hopefully effective instruction. And in addition to the immediate benefits of our project, but we hope that it will bring to our students, we also recognize the importance of collaboration and partnership within our educational community. We value the input and feedback from students, parents, and teachers in identifying the essential concepts and skills. We encourage the participation of K-12 educators, administrators, librarians, and most importantly, our students. Their voices have guided our project's development and help us create a curriculum that meets their needs effectively. And finally, throughout this journey, it's just been a privilege to play a role in planning and coordinating the OER Adaptive Grant. It's also been a pleasure designing and creating the adaptive OER materials and lessons, employing a variety of educational strategies that can be implemented both online and in person. Thank you. Be happy to take any questions you might have.
If anyone has a question, if you want to go ahead and type it into the chat window, or you can unmute. Thank you so much, Ben. Fantastic work. And thank you for the pizza image. I think everybody's hungry now. So well done. All right, let's see our next project. I will pass it over to Russell and to Drew. So let me get you teed up right here. Would you guys prefer to have screen control?
Well, Russ, what do you think?
It seems like my microphone stopped working. I apologize. For some reason, must have reset. I'm happy to control the slides if that works for everybody.
I will go ahead and
That'd
stop
be
sharing,
great.
and I will pass it over to you.
Great, and I will let Drew start us off.
Okay, my name is Drew, and I work for the Center for Deaf and Hard of Hearing Youth. And Russ, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Russ Hugo. I'm at the University of Washington Language Learning Center.
Yes, and Russ and I met at the World Language Conference, and we've been working on that committee now for the last 2 or 3 years. I don't know how long it's been. It's been quite a while. And we've been focusing on world language and other languages and how they're taught all over the Washington state. Some of the least taught languages, and a few that include ASL. So the two of us were thinking, what would be a good project? And it was tough. It was tough to decide in the beginning. We were thinking about what is lacking, what's missing out there in the ASL community. What could we do? And we realized that there was no STEM focus, particularly with curriculum. So we looked around and we saw that there were other projects that had already been done by Kathy Corrado previously. Cash on Hand, these hands, and another one, they had videos, and they focused on deaf people at work, particularly around the Seattle area, Boeing and other large employers. It was really cool. So we didn't want to do something similar because, ASL is a visual language and we needed to have video. So with STEM, it was becoming a hot topic. And so we decided to work on cybersecurity. It was very difficult. Hang on just a minute. Okay, there. Hang on. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, and so it was hard for us to find materials that we could work with in ASL, and we needed to find a deaf spokesperson who could sign in ASL very fluently. So, and someone who worked in that field. So we looked around and we had a meeting and we tried to get in touch with Microsoft and see if we could talk to a deaf team there. And we did learn a great deal from them. And we made a few recommendations for our program. But now we've finally reached out to Dr. Hang on just a minute. Say it again, please. Dr. Kyle Murbach. And he works for the University of Alabama in Huntsville. He does STEM academics at the STEM Academy at the School for the Deaf and Blind. So we were thrilled, and he was happy to join in on our team. Very exciting. And the content area that we wanted to focus on was ASL and STEM. So we looked at work experience and transition, and this is for a more advanced ASL student. It can be applied to both L1 and L2 learners. The L1 is more focused for work experience and transition, living skills, and what happens when you're out on a job. L2 applies more for STEM and is focused on vocabulary and supplemental materials for the current curriculum that's operating in high schools. So the curriculum and the lessons plans, we wanted to expand the goal of the curriculum and the lesson plans to include 5 areas, or I'm sorry, 5 days. And so we thought this would be very easy to adjust. It's something that could be expanded to 2 or 3 weeks. And I know that, and I understand that with high school scheduling, you know, some classes are 50 minutes, or you might meet just twice a week. And so there's a great deal of variation. So we put down 5 days. So there's 1 for each. And each has a topic. There is what is cybersecurity. There is the type of cybersecurity. And that one we were really blown away by. There were so many different kinds of cybersecurity. You know, I thought that there was kind of one thing and that was it, but no, there's a whole host of them. So then understanding online safety, also how to take care of data and keep it secure. And the last part is cybersecurity as a major and as an interest. And so seeing all that from the deaf perspective for those that are interested in working in cybersecurity, especially if they haven't had that kind of experience before working in security, but may have some interest. So we used the SIT framework, and we also use that as a guide. I mean, the NIST framework, sorry. What would you like to add, Russ?
No, that's an excellent introduction. I appreciate it. The thing maybe to add about the NIST framework and some of the other things is this project was also inspired by another project we had worked on to develop a cultural competency course for cybersecurity professionals, or language and cultural competency course that we had done for a Russophone or Russian context. And through that, exploring and realizing that how many career opportunities there are in cybersecurity, particularly for multilingual individuals, and that there's a lot of interest, whether it's in the public sector for the state or the nation and the private sector, for having more individuals, a wider diversity of people. And that can include any form of diversity is crucial to have good cybersecurity, but even more so, an easy way to get there, I guess, is linguistic and multicultural, multilingual competencies and proficiencies. And this is a fairly easy way for us to show heritage learners or ASL signers of various languages, but specifically here ASL, the value of their language skills in these contexts. So it's a very clear direction to apply that for whether you're going to go on to college or just right out of the gate transfer into a thing, because there's, like Drew mentioned, there are a wide variety of fields. Some are more language focused, some aren't, but even the ones that are very technical and might not have the language and cultural components, the more that we talked with experts, including we met with quite a few people prior to this, before we started on the project, people at US Cyber Command and some top administrators there, or even one who is a colonel, is basically the desperation of trying to get people who are multicultural, lingually competent, because able to understand the situation that cybersecurity is at its core a human thing. So that's where the language and culture aspect comes in. And ASL signers are exceptionally, how do you say, skilled in different ways of thinking and analyzing with their language and the rest. And so it would seem like a great avenue to develop a curriculum. And I'll turn it back to you, Drew. There.
Okay, yes. And one thing that I wanted to have you keep at the back of your mind is that deaf and hard of hearing children typically don't receive incidental learning. So this is the kind of thing that may really benefit those children as well. So we have an attribution of a non-commercial international license, and we'll be cooperating with the copyrighted information following ADA guidelines. And it'll be on the OER website as preferred by OSPI. Also, I want to thank you for the guidance that you gave us while we were trying to find the things that we needed, and we're going to be posting the ASL core online. Online, you'll find a variety of different types of information. So let's go to the next slide. This is a sample of one of the videos. This is Dr. Kyle Murbach, and this is him talking about what cybersecurity means.
And because I rearranged the slides, I apologize. This is actually, the first video here is just an example of one of the vocabulary words. So in addition to the multiple lesson videos that were created, we also created 50 or more individual vocabulary word videos like this.
Take your time. Cybersecurity.
Cybersecurity means having full protection from having data stolen and different ways to achieve full security.
And the audio is a little quiet. It probably didn't broadcast through, but we have subtitles for all the videos and English speaking dubs in addition to that. And then here is, go to the next slide. This is the video Drew was mentioning. And just as an FYI, because of some last minute changes we need to do to the audio, the render of this video, the quality is not there. But the previous video is what it'll roughly look like. So I apologize. But
what does that look like? Online safety might look like when there are social engineers trying to pull information out of you, being careful and identifying those attempts, and also not sharing too much information online. Also, learning how to identify different potentially bad software, for example, ransomware and Trojans. When you notice something, make sure you close it.
So I don't know, Drew, if you have any comments you want to make about the video.
The videos are about 2 minutes. Each one is about 2 minutes or less. And they can be put into the lesson plan. And if you would show us the next slide, please.
What does that look like?
Here it is. So this is a sample lesson plan, and it's lesson plan 1. There are 5 altogether. We didn't put all of them on the slide, but the first lesson plan here, you can see the sample. It follows the standards necessary and ASL and ASL L2, 1 and 2. So the video is embedded in the space on the lesson plan. So you would be able to post that. We'll post that on the website, and you can see that the structure is much like many of your lesson plans that you've seen before. And we'll be providing guidance as well, and providing options for doing the project for each one of the lessons. And then there'll be a presentation at the end. So there's no assessments here other than the project that they do at the end. And so, of course, you can adjust them as you like for your classroom. Any questions? We did talk about some of the implementation previously in the other slides. But for this, for L2, there may be necessarily more discussion from the perspective of people can hear or from people who are deaf. For people who are L2 learners, you may need to do some fun project, adding on some video chat with a deaf cybersecurity professional, or maybe RIT, talking to someone about employment options for deaf people. So there are some options for L2.
Great, and that's our final slide. We hopefully didn't go over time. Thanks so much, Drew, for going over all of that. And thank you to OSPI for the support on the project. It was a lot of fun to work with Drew and Kyle on this, and happy to answer any questions anyone has. And if no questions, I'll turn it back over to Barbara.
I'm sorry, I was just chatting away and I had my mute on. So I'm curious, you had mentioned STEM as being kind of a need area that you identified. Were there any other areas that you felt also were kind of lacking in resources for ASL?
All of them.
All of them.
Virtually all of them. For ASL content, yeah, I would say most all of them.
We had considered as a backup option computer science or informatics in a more general sense, and then also aviation as a STEM focused, because we've had a lot of experience working with through the StarTalk grant program here at the University of Washington for Russian and other stuff related to aviation, and the colleagues there would have a lot of contacts and ideas and things that we could have built on. But we found when it came to applicability and a clear line of for career potential and also personal use, so even for students who aren't interested in going into this particular STEM field of cybersecurity, the module still has safety and stuff that these are useful life skills and educational skills. So for those reasons there, and some of the other reasons we mentioned, we kind of pivoted towards that direction.
Thank you. Thank you very much. No, that was great, you guys. All right. Next up, we have Walla. You guys are set to go.
Hi, I'm Jen Hine, and we also have one of my colleagues, Janet Dickman, with us today. And so we just wanted to thank OSPI for this opportunity to kind of dig into one of our curriculum units that we currently teach, which is nuclear chemistry. And we like our curriculum, but at the same time, we felt like we had a really important story to tell here in Southeastern Washington, being really close to the Hanford site and the role that it's played in the development of nuclear technology throughout time. And we wanted to use this opportunity to just kind of augment and redevelop kind of a curriculum that really incorporated the history of our area with the science behind it as well. So we developed about a 5-week unit on nuclear chemistry, but also integrated some history as well. And we just wanted to, again, thank you for the grant. It enabled our teachers. We went and visited actually a nuclear reactor at Reed College in Portland. And we also visited the Hanford B reactor as well, which I think was really important for us as teachers because some of us are actually trained as biology teachers or physics teachers and some as chemistry teachers. And so I think it all gave us just kind of a similar background as far as understanding of what Hanford has contributed to our local area and science in this area. So go ahead. All right, so the focus for our unit is on the NGSS. So this the next generation science standards, which is what we use to guide our classrooms. And so it is a three-pronged approach. So there's the middle area, which is the content. So this unit is focused on nuclear chemistry and nuclear processes. But with all of our units, we try to weave in what we refer to as the science and engineering practices, which are the ones in blue. So we are focusing particularly on how scientists develop models, particularly models showing what's happening at the microscopic level, which we can't see, based on helping scientists and helping students understand, what they see with their eyes, what's actually happening at the microscopic level as well, and having students develop those models and hopefully, fine tune and revise those models as we learn more and more information. And there's several other that we're focusing on as well, but the models is the key one. And then there's also in the green are what we refer to as our cross-cutting concepts. And so those are facts and science that go across all the disciplines. So whether it's chemistry, biology, physics, or earth science, those are things that all scientists need to understand. So we're going to be focusing on the role of energy and matter as we look at nuclear technology, but also just looking at scale proportion. How can something that is as small as an atom create a large supply of energy? How are some things stable in life? How do some things change? And what role does that play in creating energy, and how can that be used for different uses, across the world? All right, next one. So our curriculum really, we currently use a curriculum out of Beaverton, Oregon. It's known as the Patterns Curriculum. It is an open educational resource, and we've also looked at Open SciEd, which our middle school currently, adopted, and so we wanted to be able to kind of build on that model. And then we've looked at some from the iHub as well. So this is really kind of a collection of, I guess, multiple sources, but then we added the local phenomena and kind of local storyline and history component to it as well. And so in most of those kind of open education resources, in science, we start with kind of a story of phenomena where students are either maybe observing a video, looking at some pictures, or looking at some phenomena that has happened out in nature. And then we try to engage all students and let them know that, they can have access to science, even if they feel like they're not, a scientist or a science student, that all students, we all know things just by observing things in our, everyday lives. And so we are going to show students a variety of pictures, and hopefully students will be able to engage in, at least one or more of the pictures, whether it be, that they're familiar with, World War II and the dropping of the bomb. Maybe they've seen some, caution radiation signs. Maybe they've known somebody who's had some medical imaging done. Or maybe they just recognize, in our district or conference, we play the Richland Bombers. And so why is that their mascot? And so looking at that, and students will kind of do some, what do we notice? What are some observations that we can make about these pictures? What are some questions that we have? Again, these are science and engineering practices that all students need to be, engaged and involved in, and should be capable of doing to kind of, elicit what they know and what they wonder. It also gives, teachers kind of a way to see, what's a good starting place, for our students, and what are some misunderstandings they might have. So we're going to ask kind of students, what is it? Maybe choose one picture that kind of ties all these other pictures together. That's kind of our starting point. You want to go to the next slide? And hopefully they'll choose. If not, maybe we'll nudge them in the direction of kind of Albert Einstein and kind of the equation of E = mc squared. So looking at what that relationship is between energy and matter. And, I think most students have, probably seen the picture of Einstein, seen the equation, maybe or maybe not know what it means. But then this is where we really want to kind of tie in the history component of our local area, and just introduce them to some historical documents, such as the letter that Einstein actually wrote to President Roosevelt, telling him about, this scientific discovery that the Germans had made, and that, the United States kind of needed to get ahead of that. And, all that turned into what we now know as the Manhattan Project, and the rush of the United States to develop uranium and plutonium in an effort to make, a bomb, which eventually ended World War II. And so we want to be able to, again, pull in those students who maybe aren't science students, but also let students know that science is not done in a vacuum. There are reasons and things that happen in society that push science forward, sometimes faster maybe than it normally would be. And so we'll kind of use that as a jumping off point to, educate students if they don't already know about the Hanford site, and which is located in the Tri-Cities. And, is that something that we need to be concerned about? Should we be concerned about radiation in our area? How concerned should we be? and then kind of back that up and introduce students to kind of the history of various scientists and what their contributions have been to our knowledge of nuclear technology today, and then kind of flash forward to what are some uses today. So our goal is to, throughout this, to look at the science of it, but also look at, how does science develop? And then also look at, what are kind of some of the ethics behind it as well. So once we have this knowledge, how do we decide what we actually do with it, and who just makes those decisions, as well. Go ahead and go to the next slide. I kind of jumped ahead to the goals already, but we want students to know that, again, that science, history, and society, they are independent. I think a lot of times the history of science gets left out of science class. And sometimes in science class, we leave out the history. And so I think by mingling those together, hopefully it'll kind of hook and engage maybe a larger variety of students, but just give them kind of a sense of place and contribution of our local area. Also to just really highlight that science is done by a diverse group of people. So men, women, people of color, people who have had access to things, people who have had not access to a lot of technology supplies, or colleges or education even, to be able to do science, but everybody can do science. And then hopefully also to just demystify, what nuclear science is as well, and let students know all the different applications that it can be, throughout society. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Janet, to talk a little bit about kind of what we're going to put on the website.
Hey, this is Janet Dickman, and can you all hear me? Is that good? Okay. So I'll talk about the overview of the unit and how it's being organized and a little bit of what it will look like. You can see the 4 questions here are big guiding questions for the unit. So we begin, as Jen explained, with the introduction to the phenomenon, which is based on our local area and very much part of the history of World War II, really. I think a lot of people don't realize how much nuclear science is a part of the story of the Manhattan Project. Then we focus in on radiation, which again, there are a lot of misconceptions about radiation. So we clear those up. And then we move on to really the kind of the meat of the chemistry in the unit here, talking about nuclear chain reactions, types of decay, fission, and fusion. And then we end with really, as Jen was saying, a primary goal of this unit is to really introduce students to pros and cons of nuclear technology, to help students realize how formative nuclear technology has been in the past, and also its possibilities for the future. Next slide, please. So this is a little bit of a zoom in to that second question about radiation. And you can see this encompasses lessons 3 through 7 in our unit. These questions that are listed in the little graphic there are a little bit more focused, and these are questions that we tackle in each lesson. The lessons themselves might take more than 1 class period. Someone mentioned earlier that every high school has a different length of class, but the idea is that each lesson is a topic. And so we'll address the topics by themselves. And as we go through these lessons, we answer the questions that are listed here. We have learning targets, that's what students figure out, and then kind of a progression so that we are able to move through the unit in a way that makes sense. One of the things we discovered in researching for this unit is there's a lot of disparate ideas within nuclear technology, and we had to think about what to keep in and what to kick out, as well as in what order would we like to present topics. Next slide, please. This is just some specifics about what, if you're interested in using this as a resource, what you will find. For the teacher, there's not a lot of teachers know about the history, not a lot of people in general. know about the history of Hanford and the Manhattan Project that applies directly to this unit. So there's background information to orient the teacher. Like Jen said, not everyone teaching chemistry has a chemistry background either. We focus and we are committed to the NGSS. There's lesson overviews, slides for teachers to use in class, and assessment options and rubrics for those assessments that we present. We really feel like a big benefit of this curriculum is that it's engaging to students. And the open-sided model of beginning with a phenomenon and having a connection to their life outside of school helps within student engagement. We also connect to the history of this local area and history class in general, which, as Jen mentioned, some kids maybe like history better than science. So we want to help them see how they connect worksheets, learning trackers, and suggestions for differentiated instruction. Next slide, please. This is really the last thing we wanted to share, and this is kind of a sample of what we're developing. You can see this is lesson 11 vision. There's the teacher background information with things like links to videos and just explanation of what you should know before teaching this lesson. The middle image there is a student activity page, what the student can work on as you go through the lesson, and then a little example of the slides. Part of our sort of target as we're developing this is that the information will, or the materials themselves rather, will be adaptable. People have mentioned that in this presentation as well. So we're trying to provide materials that teachers can really make their own and that are more of like a template kind of a general design. I think that's good. Jen, do you have anything to add?
No, I think that's it. I mean, if anybody else has questions, you can put them in the chat or you email us at Walla High School. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jen and Jana and all your colleagues that worked on this. It's a really nice example of just contextualizing content for a local environment. And I think it just makes it so much more engaging for folks. All right, Ria, I'm going to turn it over to you to bring us home.
All right, hello. Hopefully everyone can hear and see me okay. My unit was on sexual violence and sex trafficking in the 21st century. I'm a student from Eastside Prep, and I'm also the person who won the grant and is driving the force to try and implement this in our public schools. So Barbara, please, next slide. Thank you. So I'm just going to quickly go over a little bit of an introduction of my team and some of our plans, the design of a lot of our lesson plans, the current implementation status of where we are, and hopefully some strategies and future implementation plans based on what I'll show you earlier. Hopefully you guys can follow with me. Bear in mind I might make some mistakes. So here's a quick introduction to some of the capacities and plans. I have an amazing team first off, so I want to shout out all of them. Counselor Sam Foote is Eastside Prep student counselor and at the same time is the content writer, as she is very specialized within the domain of sex trafficking and sexual violence. Dr. Victoria Sattler is a nurse manager at Harborview and is a lead faculty for sex trafficking prevention at WSU's College of Nursing. Dee Cummings is the head of UW PCAP, which works with sex trafficking victims. Alyssa Myers is a health educator in the Clover Park School District. More on Alyssa a little bit later, but she has been helping me snowball sample this. Vina Rana Stewart is a content reviewer for the ESD 121 and will be serving as someone who is reviewing the practicality and usability of the contents that comes out of this course. I also have to shout out Mr. Greg Williamson from DCYF, who has been a big part of helping me with this project and been an advisor. And of course, the wonderful Lori Dills, who has been another advisor to this project since I even had it as an idea. And that's me. Next, please. All right, so I'm kind of going to go over a really quick timeline of how I went about this project. The first thing I did was select the content. I cared to choose really inclusive and informative and very actionable sexual assault and sex trafficking content. I cared that these three tenets of being inclusive, informative, and actionable were maintained, especially since a lot of victims don't see their stories represented, as the conventional descriptions of sex trafficking and sexual assault tend to be really heavily focused on the conventional of one stereotype, of one sexuality, of one race kind of victim, when that isn't always the case. In fact, most of the times it isn't. I cared to have met some survivors or hear about survivors through, of course, Dee Cummings, and learn some from their experiences and ask questions and figure out what I could integrate within this course between their understanding and openly licensed resources that I could use, and then distill the content down to a 6-week unit. From there, I categorized the lessons into weekly lesson plans that I'll show you, and then wrote the content according to the standards that currently existed, and used resources like RAIN and Polaris and places that were very notoriously known for sex trafficking and sexual violence prevention. And on the other hand, 2 books that I'll show you in a moment to write the content completely within the format that was given. I had Minu and Dr. Sattler review the content and modify the content with me. And I'm currently in the phase of snowball sampling, where I'm trying to deliver the unit in health and social studies classrooms. Next slide, please. All right, so starting off with conceptual design, next slide. What we essentially did was go at it from 2 standpoints, an instructional standpoint and an activity standpoint, because what we cared about was not only that students understood the content, but could also interact with it in a way that made it tangible to them and not just an availability bias of the statistic. So first and foremost, we had to ask the questions of ourselves and within 2-word students of what is sexual violence and what is sex trafficking? How do we understand and mitigate these crimes with the technology and resources available in the 21st century? And how do other factors within the matrices of society, like race, gender, socioeconomic class, religion, and other strata in their own rights, influence the way that these crimes operate? And on the other side, we had the activity standpoint. How do we make students best engaged with the course content? How do we make sexual violence and sex trafficking tangible while at the same time not triggering towards students? And how do we make sure that students feel an obligation to upstand toward this idea? Some of the resources we used to try and integrate this were Columbia University's oppression wheel diagram. They had an excellent oppression wheel diagram toward the intersectionality portion of it. And that was something we utilized pretty openly and we expanded upon throughout our work. RAIN, Polaris, the Lantern Project, and UTA PCAP had a lot of publicly available resources that could be used that we have begun to use within our work. And then Mithu Sanyal and Cindy Crabb wrote Rape from Lucretia to #MeToo and Learning Goods and Consent, the latter of which is a pretty famous book around sexual violence, that we utilized as well, passages of which that we tried to bring out and detail within our work to ensure that students understood these concepts in a deeper and more intersectional way. Next slide, please. And so in comes a sample lesson plan. We have been making these skeletons of sample lesson plans to sort of bring out the ideas of what we want from each resource. And this is it at its most basic. We had to plan at least 1 activity and 1 lecture per lesson. And we have developed PowerPoints and lesson slides to kind of complement these lesson plans for students to best understand things. We're not done fully uploading them to the OER Hub, full disclaimer, but we will be very soon because all 6 weeks worth of lesson plans have been completed. We are just going through them for our final sweeps and making sure they align to the standards just before we upload them and send them to you. So Barbara, look out for that. But on that note, more of the components within some of our lesson plans. We have a guiding question and a brief description. So for example, this overarching umbrella topic of what it is and kind of what it means, the objectives, the materials needed, and then a homework that accurately summarizes it. I am told that there are a lot of students within the class that might not have the time to go complete homework. So as a result of that, we have tried to make sure that all homeworks are kept to video and audio for inclusivity's sake, so they can have it on in the background while they multitask with other things like perhaps holding up their family and keeping things as they go to make sure that their lives run smoothly too. Next, please. And as for designing activities, we had several ideas, and we actually employed these several ideas within the use of the pilot implementation, which was in my school in form of a seminar. We had wall-sized poster boards, sticky note, guess the definition activities. We even had one activity where we drew out the matrix of the oppression wheel and said, you know, here is everything that you have within your oppression wheel that you're reading. Now write it out and tell us what's missing. Like, what do you feel like should have been included in this that wasn't? In a way, getting students to understand the nuances and ideas behind sexual assault and sex trafficking, like power and control, but at the same time, not making it a full talking at you Histonic lesson. And most importantly, kind of incorporating these OER formatted slides into these very talking to methods as compared to hearing from or just talking at. So next slide, please. And then the current implementation status is happening within my school, Eastside Prep and Clark County. So I'm going to quickly start with Eastside Prep because we've done that pretty detailed. We ran something called a seminar within my school, and these are 6-week courses. Bear in mind, this is a unit. I'm just talking about the time slot. These are these 6-week time slots that take on a very relevant interdisciplinary and educational topic. EPS offers about 20 to 25 seminars. This was actually seminar number 26, and we managed to convince my dean to make sure that this happened. And I co-taught this with my school counselor. They were 1 hour a week and they were optional. And we had full capacity in both fall and spring and a wait list, which we were very pleasantly surprised about. And it was 4 credits. So some of the tuition money does go toward this seminar. It's 0.5 credits on a transcript, while the standard course credit is about 1 credit out of my school. Next slide, please. That said, this was the course plan that got fleshed out. This course plan is, and I'm going to be very honest about this, it is a variable course plan, and that is because we want to make sure that this unit is integratable. If people need only 1 or 2 lessons, they can take it from here. So the idea was to make sure that each one of these lessons could stand alone. So if someone needed a sexual violence lesson, but they didn't need everything else because time didn't allow or money didn't allow, they could take it and use it and leave it at that, with getting the same intersectional and actionable education. So each of the weeks we kind of covered what is sexual violence. Week 2 was who does it affect? Week 3 was how does it impact an individual and what does it do to the community? Kind of bringing in the intersectionality element over there. Week 4 was a switch to sex trafficking and what it is. Week 5 was how we can identify it within our daily lives and how we can use our understanding of it to help our communities. And week 6 was student-led mainly. How can we be someone who helps based on what we know of the crime? So kind of giving more agency to the students and building it like a privilege as the weeks went on. Next, please. That said, we collected some data. We made sure that that Counselor Foote and I designed a survey and she sent it out, and everyone kind of gave a numerical value on a scale of 1 to 5. And in some cases it was qualitative. So it was like a bar leaning less or leaning more. And here's what I can tell you. A lot of the students felt the value of the seminar was about 4 or 5 out of 5. And they felt that the seminar was very valuable to their understanding of the topics and that the seminar was very effective for them. And we were very lucky and very fortunate to hear that. They also felt like the lectures could have leaned a little bit on the less side, which is where we adapted our plans to include more visuals, images, and activities as compared to solely content delivery, without compromising some of the topics. For the homework, they surprisingly wanted more. They liked the audio and video that we had chosen. So we tried to make sure that we incorporated more of those publicly sourced videos within our lessons from the said places that I mentioned earlier to ensure that students could get more time to listen and understand for themselves. For activities, they liked the current amount of it. So we stuck with kind of the plan of what for example, the oppression matrix and the power wheel and things like that we incorporated and made sure it stayed within our course and didn't change. And then on the miscellaneous note, if they wished anything would have changed within the seminar, a lot of them said that they didn't wish anything would have changed. Some of them said that they wished there was a little bit more transparency, which I appreciated and I understood. So to kind of balance it even more and to make sure that the topic wasn't triggering, but adding more on the sexual violence and sex trafficking note, I made sure to conduct more interviews with survivors and to work pretty closely with Counselor Foote to incorporate that angle within our learning as well to make sure that that was valuable for each of the students. Next, please. And luckily, for the most influential seminar, one quick thing I wanted to share with you all is that people and students really love this course. The classroom that came was super diverse. We had a lot of people who were of different socioeconomic backgrounds, different races, different genders, different sexualities. Everyone was really receptive to it. I was really happy to hear that. And the seminar ended up getting rated the most influential one that students had taken at EPS. I don't need to read out these quotes to kind of state how much they meant to me, but at the same time, I was really glad to see that students were receiving this in a way that was positive and engaging for them, and they didn't feel like they were sitting in another lesson that taught them things that they might not feel like they need to use even when they really do. So next slide, please. And that said, switching to another really important place, Clark County. Clark County is where human trafficking and sex trafficking among middle and high schoolers is a pretty huge problem. And that's unfortunate if you think about the age of a middle schooler, but also unfortunately expected if you think about the age range in which sexual violence and sex trafficking happen, which is from 12 to 18. And this is really centered within this area. 5 out of my 6 lesson plans have been used in Clark County by Clark County teachers toward their students in trying to solve this issue. And the initial response, as I've heard from the teachers, has been extremely positive, and there's been a really good reception among teens. A lot of them had created something called a wristband pact, which kind of said, "We're not for sale." And that was their advocacy standpoint against sex trafficking and sexual violence. And what this course did was give them an educational voice within the school for students to take it. And both classes, by the way, that have been run until now have reached full capacity, which humongously surprised me and made me feel really grateful that this was there. There is no long-term data yet, but to be very honest, I am looking forward to receiving that and to snowball sampling with them further. So on that note, that should be good with them, and I'm really excited to keep working with Clark County. And that said, some more implementation status. The first and biggest one is in the Clover Park School District, which, if you remember, I mentioned earlier, Alyssa, who is the teacher who I've contracted with for this course, is someone who I'm working with to implement it there. The approved sampling dates are on May 31st, June 1st, June 2nd. I'm going to be going in as a volunteer to visit and to teach with Alyssa that day. And I'll be teaching 2 health classes in 2 divisions. There's one that's for 9th to 10th graders, another that's for 11th to 12th graders. And as per what Clover Park allowed, we had our first experience with compartmentalizing our courses as need be. So there were some changes made in the appropriate nature of the content for both classes. For example, we could run 2 sex trafficking lessons with the 11th and 12th graders, and we could run 1 sexual violence and 1 sex trafficking lesson with the 9th and 10th graders. And we had to pick and choose which ones beforehand. And many students in these classrooms did have ADD and ADHD learning accommodations and had aid plans. So we had to make sure that our classwork and homework were pre-adapted to their use. We shortened the time as to what's recommended by the WHO and by other sites for ADHD and ADD. We spoke to some of the students beforehand to make sure that they would be okay with things. And now we're actually going to go in and sample it. So we're going to sample the intersectionality portion and the introduction to sex trafficking portion and see how it goes. So I'm really excited to do that. All right. That should be everything for now. Thank you so much. Please reach out to me if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer them, and so are members of my team. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ria. Really, really fantastic job. All right, you guys, I know that we're over. Thank you for sticking with us until the end here. Just one quick note, please go and visit the Washington OER Hub to see these resources. Some of them will be up in the next month. Some of them are there now. So keep checking back. And thank you guys all. Just some really, really powerful examples of open educational resources in content areas that are, currently underrepresented out there in the instructional materials ecosystem. So greatly appreciate all of your efforts and all of the hard work that everyone's done. I hope everyone has a fantastic afternoon. I will have the recordings and the slide presentations up on the website soon. And as always, please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Thanks again to everyone. Have a great day. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Barbara, this is Catherine. Is the recording off?
It